Hi, welcome back to the Heffy Doodle YouTube channel. This is Lauren, and I'm jumping on the Christmas in July wagon here, or maybe I should say tractor, and I'm going to show you how to use Heffy Doodle's Farmyard stamp sets and dies to create a Christmas card. So I'm going to start with my background. I'm ink blending on some Distress Oxide in Tumbled glass onto some watercolor or mixed media paper. Once I get it halfway down my A2 size piece, I'm going to grab some Distress ink to add a little bit of splatter. I'm using Salty Ocean, and I've put it on a piece of acetate so I don't keep my desk messy. And then I sprinkled on some water, and now I'm using a thin paintbrush to splatter that on to my background. Once I'm happy with how much splatter I have, I will clean up my desk, and then I'm gonna grab a paper towel to pick up the excess water and ink. I'm going to repeat that same process, but this time with some white ink. Again, putting it onto my little acetate sheet, adding some water, and then using a thin paintbrush to splatter that on. I want to create a fun snowy scene, so I thought having blue and white sprinkles or splatter in my sky would kind of give that effect. Once I'm happy with my white splatter, I will clean up my mess again and then set that background aside to dry. I've grabbed some stamps from my Farmyard Fun stamp set. I grabbed the tractor, the wagon, and the presents, and I've stamped it onto my alcohol marker friendly cardstock by Heffy Doodle in some black ink that is alcohol marker friendly. And I'm going to be using my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers to color in my images. So because I am creating a Christmas card, we need a bright red tractor. So I'm going to show some of my coloring so you can see how I use my markers. So I'm starting with the darkest red. This is DR3, and I'm just adding in where I'm going to have shadows onto my tractor. Next, I'm going to grab DR2, which is going to be my midtone, and I'm going to extend that color out and create a lighter version of those shadows. So again, just bringing out that darkest color using my medium tone. And while I am showing just the tractor, this is the same process that I will use for my little wagon. Once I've completed coloring everything with my midtone, I'm going to grab my lightest marker, which is DR1, and completely color in my tractor, doing my best to get a good blend between my darkest, my middle tone, and my lightest tone. Once I'm happy with how my tractor looks, I'm going to jump over and color in my wagon, and now we can move on to the wheels. So I want my tractor wheels to look black, but of course I don't want to use actual true black, so I'm going to grab my ice grays. I'm starting with my darkest, which is ice gray 10, which is IG10, and then I will move on to a mid-tone, IG8, and again, same like I did with my tractor, I'm bringing that color out and extending that shadow onto my tractor wheels. And I'm going to do the tractor as well as the wagon. Because these are smaller areas, I'm just going to color them at the same time. And then finally, I will grab Ice Gray 6, and again, like I did with my red, just really blend in all of that together, creating shadow on the underside of my tires. Once that's all done, I'm just going to grab some random colors here, and we're going to color in the rest of my tractor and my present, so I will tell you the colors as I go through each step. So I'm going to grab CT3, which is a yellow, and color in my light, and then I'm going to grab IB1, which is a light blue, to color in the window of my tractor. Now for my presents, I'm going to use EB1 and EB3 to color in what looks kind of like a brown bag package that came in the mail. And I'm going to use AG3 and AG1 to color in a green striped package. And then I will grab that DR1 again to color in my red bow. I'm also going to use that red to color in the polka dots on my other gift, and then I will grab TB3, which is a blue, for that tall present, and finally I'm going to grab GY1, which is my light yellow kind of golden color, and finish coloring in my package. Now that those are all colored in, I'm going to grab the coordinating dies and my Heffy Doodle tape to help me keep that in place. But first I want to trim down my cardstock so that way it will fit on my little mini die cut machine. So I'm going to place the dies around each of their corresponding images and then use my Heffy Doodle tape to help keep that in place so nothing moves or slides while I am die cutting. I really love my little machine. It's perfect for little dies like this. I'm not having to do a lot of die cutting at once, so it's the perfect little tool to keep on my desk and easy to die cut my images. I'm going to run that through my die cut machine and then we'll pop these out. So while I take my little images out of their dies, I'm going to grab my white gel pen and just add a little bit of highlights to these images. So while I'm doing that, I wanted to let you know that I've already started die cutting my background images off camera. I use some white cardstock to die cut out my Rolling Hills landscape die, and then I'll use some Kraft cardstock to cut my fence border die. And then I used Kraft and my Wintergreen from Heffy Doodle cardstock to die cut out my trees. So you can see my two little green trees there. So now that my background is dry, I'm going to grab my glue burr and I'm going to adhere my pretty snowy background onto a side folding A2 card base. So it's top folding because it's in landscape. And I'm gluing that right down. So I have cut my background to fit perfectly onto that A2 card base. Next, I'm going to grab my scissors, and the Rolling Hills die doesn't fully cut on the edges, so it's a great way to add some fun layers to your card. So I'm going to just trim off that top layer so I have 3 hills, and because I used white cardstock, it gives the effect of snowy hills. I'm grabbing my glue burr and I'm going to glue down this background, and I'm not putting glue on the very edge of either top of those 3 hills because I want to be able to tuck in some of my other die cut images like my fence here. I'm going to add some glue burr behind each of the posts of my fence, and I'm going to glue this onto my background. And because I didn't put glue all the way to the edge of my top rolling hill, I'll be able to slide those posts behind that back hill. So I'm just trying to add a little more fun to my image like we're on the farm, and that's the edge of the farm with that brown wooden fence. After that, I'm going to glue my trees together. So first I'm going to add some glue to my tree trunk, and I'm going to glue that behind my green tree. And I'm going to do that for both trees. And for one of the trees, I'm going to tuck in behind that middle hill so it looks like it's a little further away. It's behind that hill. So I'm going to add some glue to the back of this tree, and then I'm going to use some tweezers to help me get into that hill. So again, there is no glue at the very top edge of that hill, so I'm just trying to use my fingers to slide in that tree trunk, and my tweezers also help. So I have that back tree in place, and then I'm going to repeat the same process for my other tree, but this time I'm just going to glue it on the front side of that middle hill. So they're kind of layered, but the trees, have some dimension and perspective because that other tree is behind the hill. Finally, I'm going to glue my presents behind my little tractor add-on, and I'm going to grab my foam adhesive to glue these onto the card base. So I'm just going to trim some pieces down to fit perfectly behind my tractor and the little wagon behind it. And then once I have all of my adhesive down, I'm going to pick up the release paper, and then I will add these 2 little images to the background. I will put the back of the wagon where it will go onto the card while I apply the tractor, so pulling off that release paper first, and that way I can make sure that my tractor and the little wagon behind it are going to fit exactly where I want them to on the card, and then I will pull off the release paper from that back little wagon and add that down. Now I wanted to add one more touch to the card, so I'm going to emboss a sentiment onto some black cardstock, and I'm going to use a sentiment from the same Farmyard Fun stamp set, and it says, "Sending you loads of love." I used an anti-static powder on my black cardstock before stamping in Versamark, and then covered it in white embossing powder and used my heat gun to melt that powder down. Once it was cooled down enough, I'm just grabbing a Swiffer cloth to pick up any of that excess anti-static powder. I'm going to go ahead and trim that real quick off camera, and then I will add some foam adhesive again, just like I did with my tractor, to the back of this sentiment strip. And then I'm going to peel off the release paper and add this to the top left of my card. And that finishes off my card. I hope you enjoyed this process and that you will use your farm Heffy Doodle products for Christmas cards as well. You can find a link of all of the items I use down below in the description of this video. Make sure you also find Heffy Doodle on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter for more inspiration.